BackFickMedia.com presents Beyond the Wall, a Game of Thrones podcast. With hosts Christiana Ellis, Chooch Schubert, Vivid Muse, and Nookchus. Yep, hello everybody, this is Chooch. Welcome to Beyond the Wall, Season 8, Episode Where's My Notes? Episode 5, Game of Thrones, titled Euron Loses Aimbot. Or actually titled The Bells, with no spoilers past the currently aired episodes. I'm Chooch, as always, joined by Christiana Ellis.
Hello.
Vivid Muse.
Hi.
And we will be joined shortly by Nutty Nutchus. She's just going to be a little bit late this time, but we will get all of her info and views and whatnot from this exciting episode. It was another big giant battle, which I think we were expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's see, news bits. There was one little bit that I don't know, that's not anything that's been confirmed, and I don't know if it ultimately matters that much, but Ian McElhenney, who played Barristan Selmy, was doing a panel at a comic convention and said during the panel that George R.R. Martin has already finished books 6 and 7 and had made an agreement with Benioff and Weiss to hold publication until the show finished. Which wouldn't terribly surprise me, but I think he would have been transparent about it.
Yeah, I'm not who knows, maybe it's true, but I guess I wouldn't necessarily assume that, an actor who was last on the show 3 seasons ago is the best source for that sort of information.
Finger on the pulse. He said he's very excited to see, if anything different happens to...
I mean, that sounds very much like the sort of thing where he's saying, I don't know, maybe that's what's happening. And people are saying, that's what's happening. And he says, is that what's happening? And then all of a sudden it's a headline. Who knows? Right. I don't know. Maybe it's true.
I mean, it seems like the possible kind of a deal, though.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there have been people speculating that there was something to that effect involved, but the idea that 6 and 7 were completely written already, I don't know. I mean, I can't help but think that at least it's one thing to say 6 and 7, but if 6 was written, how long ago was that done? Because that seems like you could have used that cross promotion, keeping interest in the brand high during a long season gap.
Yeah,
I don't know. It doesn't seem to me like it would be my choice in terms of how to best handle that, but I don't know.
I know you would not think it would be a publisher's choice. Sure. Benioff and Weiss can want whatever they want, but there's a lot of money involved in this stuff.
Yeah.
And after the Cupgate the previous episode, now for this week we've been seeing screen caps of Jaime hugging Cersei with both hands. He doesn't have his fake hand on her.
What?
Yeah, apparently just before the roof comes down, when they are embracing, he's missing the gold hand and has a regular
I don't know.
hand.
I mean, maybe we don't know. It was perhaps it was the magic of the crypts that he just miraculously grew his hand back at the last second.
Ooh.
The 7 wanted him to be able to hug his sister/lover one more time.
That's a weird thing. And Viv mentioned, maybe it was like a ghost situation where it's like they're visioning what used to be and moments.
Yeah. Whoopi Goldberg turns into Demi Moore.
Yeah.
Kind of magic.
I don't know if you had more news bits, but just seeing the chat, we've got, some folks already eager to express their feelings about the episode. But one of the things that I was, I had mentioned just before we started recording was separate from anything specific about the episode. It really does seem like the broader consensus and zeitgeist of what is the internet's feeling about the show does seem like it's turned. Like
Yeah.
it's now the thing is to hate the show, which
Yeah.
isn't a defense of the show. It's not that I'm not trying to express my own opinions here, just to say that that seems to be the opinion that people are piling in on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm super annoyed that I'm struggling with the show as well, because I really wanted to love it all the way to the end. I was determined to, but they're just making it real hard.
Well, are we ready to get into the episode or general thoughts, or I don't want to
I had
skip
one
forward.
quick YouTube comment from a couple episodes again, from
Okay.
the Eye of Horus, saying, "Did you guys notice that Lyanna Mormont's axe turned into a sword during her death scene? She was holding an axe when she was charging, and then stabbed the giant in the eye with a sword."
Huh.
Unfortunately, I'm late to this. I just noticed the comment, and I haven't had a chance to go back and look. But right now, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, at this
all.
point, I mean, I think we could fine tooth comb all the episodes, and I'm sure we'll find
Yeah.
something in each one.
I feel like that's a relatively minor, nitpicky sort of continuity error. I think, and that, but I mean, that's almost kind of a good example too of just how there can be this sort of turning of the wheel where before continuity errors were continuity errors. People would say, "Why are you nitpicking about a great show? Why are you making such a fuss over like tiny things? Who cares?" But now everybody's pouring all over it to find the next big one that's going to be the viral sensation that's a new meme and all that. So again, like, I'm not saying that any of the people doing that are doing anything wrong, or that they're not, their feelings about it are not sincere, but it does just seem like if we're looking at collective behavior, it has certainly turned negative in a dramatic way.
Yeah.
Far more so than I would normally expect for a show, even if it's having a weaker final season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely hit a tipping point.
Yeah.
So overall, this episode, general thoughts.
You know what? Maybe I'm going to be the one with the unpopular opinion here in saying that I didn't hate it. I mean, there are certain things about it that I don't think were handled very well, and things, but I don't know. Maybe I just got all my mad out from last week, because part of what I was really trying to do with the remainder of this season, especially after last week, was just to say, I'm really going to, and I said this last week, I'm really going to try to not predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to try really hard to just let the show tell me its own story and not try to guess what it's doing. And I think that helped me to not have expectations be dashed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also that at least one of the things that made people really mad was the revelation, about what Jaime was actually there to do. Namely, he was not actually heading there to kill Cersei, like a lot of people tried to excuse his behavior last week as saying that was somehow his real plan. And I'm like, no, I don't like that, even if that is his real plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe because I had already been mad about that last week, I didn't feel mad about it again this week. And like, the other general things that people are being really mad about, I sort of feel like execution was clumsy, but I don't necessarily hate the actual story direction.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems like not something that enrages me, but rather just something that's like, I wish that had been better, but fine. And then there were a couple of things that I actually really liked. So I'm not saying it's a great episode, but I'm certainly hating it less than last week by quite a wide margin.
How about you, Viv?
I'm really mixed on it, because I really feel like it was a beautiful episode of destruction. It was just mind-boggling how huge the level of destruction was. And in that sense, I think, nobody died during the filming of it. Nobody got hurt or anything like that. That is notable, and the goal and all of that kind of stuff. But I think visually it was absolutely probably what they were going for. Like Emilia Clarke had mentioned, find the biggest TV and watch it on that because it's just huge kind of a thing going on. And I agree with that. There was so much going on screen that it was like trying to focus in on one thing it was just a lot. And, but I also feel like I think it was more for me, again, same as last week. It's more than just they took this in a different way than I liked. It was like I feel cheated. I feel like the characters were cheated. I feel like my level of devotion was cheated. You know what I mean? And it's yeah. I thought it was really good on one sense, but it was really just weak sauce and so many others that I think I'm just disappointed again. I think it's just where I land. Like all things considered, I think I'm just disappointed again.
Yeah.
Shortchanged.
Yeah, I'm close. I'm in the middle of both. Closer to Christiana, probably. That I thought this was definitely much better than the last one, and definitely some parts that I really, really liked, and but definitely some stuff that yeah, I feel sort of betrayed. I don't feel as Ghost not getting Scritches betrayed, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
but still pretty much.
Right. I mean, I think it's entirely fair to be very frustrated that there were an awful lot of plot threads that just got, tossed out the window. That it's like, okay, well, I guess none of that actually mattered in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
And I think that and it's like the two biggest sort of story, pivots that they took, with Cersei and Jamie, and then of course with Dany. And I feel like, separate from how well they executed it, which I think was not great, the story in and of itself, is a tragic story they're trying to tell, right?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's sometimes useful to try to separate out where the feelings are coming from, right? Because sometimes we can feel upset or sad about a story just telling a sad story, right?
Yeah.
And there's a difference between that and feeling like this sad story, this sad moment wasn't earned, right? Because Jamie going back to Cersei was a tragedy, right? He was so that relationship was just too strong for his development to overcome, and he could not help himself but to go back to her, and that's a tragedy, right? Daenerys being this character who wanted to help people, being sort of ruined by her own, what's a strength in some cases, became, this, we would call it madness or whatever, so that's a sad story.
Yeah.
So this episode is telling a sad story in several different levels. But then there's also just the question of did they tell it well? And I think that that's mixed at best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into the meat of it. We open with, okay, so I didn't get complete notes like I usually do with step-by-step things, but I think we opened with Varys.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Screeching on Jon. So we got him writing his little letters, and we get to one of the little birds who comes in, which is kind of cool. It's pretty rare that we see the network in action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learn that Dany is not eating, won't speak to anybody.
So here's a question for you guys. This did not occur to me when watching, but I saw someone else in a recap speculate on this. You think he was trying to work with this girl to poison her?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do. Because he
Yeah.
said, let's try again at supper.
Yeah. Because it could be framed as just like, oh, well, we want to try to talk to her or get through to her. But
Or maybe get her to eat at supper time.
yeah.
We'll try again at supper
He
time.
did talk
before
about
she'll
high
eat.
risk or high reward, right?
Mhm.
You know, like,
Yep,
so
that's what leads to the poison, I think.
Yeah.
But
Mhm. It's a little bit strange, I think, to because I that didn't even occur to me when I was watching it, but it seems a little weird that they would sort of allude to that but not confirm it. Like, why?
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think to make us stay sympathetic to him.
Eh.
But did anybody else think of it was like seeing the two of them together on the rewatch was just like the weirdest Orphan Annie reboot ever? With like Varys Warbucks or Daddy Varys or oh god, that sounds good. I don't like
Little
the sound of Daddy Varys.
Wasn't the girl's name Martha? I think that was established at some point.
Mhm.
Something like
Yeah.
that, yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't remember her name. It's just like his bald head all leading in, giving her all this
Yeah.
advice.
Mm-hmm.
Greatest risk, greatest reward. Now go poison your queen, just
Yeah.
but he was like
Yeah.
legit just like sending her off basically to die.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like what we talked about last week, though, that at a certain point, it's like, okay, the whole deal with hiring him was if you're ever going to betray me, talk to me first.
Yeah.
And he did. And
Mhm.
she didn't follow his advice. And so it's like, how is he not in chains already? Like, that was already a
know.
tactical mistake on her part.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, to be fair, she had a lot on her mind in this particular moment.
True. Yeah. Yeah. Threats only as good as your follow through. But
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
so then, of course, Tyrion lets Dany know and that Varys has betrayed her. You
Mhm.
mean John?
Well,
Whoa.
so that we get the scene of Varys and John on the beach
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
right?
John and
Because
Varys
Oh,
first.
right.
Tyrion watched that
Yes.
before he went to talk to Dany.
When the Master Whispers says out loud, "Yo, how about some treason?"
Mhm.
Yeah. To her consort.
Yeah,
I don't want it.
right.
So, I mean, I don't know.
I am not happy with the show seemingly heading in this direction that John actually would be this great king. Like Varys is so determined.
Yeah.
I kind of hope that's not what happens, frankly. I don't think he would actually be that great.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about that in the past. And so it's also kind of a weird message in 2019 to say that the real true ruler that will rule the land and bring peace to everyone is the guy who actually had the legal claim to the throne because of his bloodline.
Right.
Right. Because cocks are still important and women are too emotional to be in power.
Yeah. So I kind of hope that's not actually what happens.
Yeah.
But
Well,
well,
here's why I don't think John is fit to be king, because in that conversation with John and Varys on the beach, Varys basically lays out, we both know what she's going to do.
uh-huh.
We know implying we know she's going to burn King's Landing to the ground. And John is like, well, she's our queen. That was it. He knew. He looked Varys in the eye and he admitted that he knew what was at risk. And we know that he was giving her the side eye all episode long.
Yeah.
And he knew it was possible. And he reminded, I guess it was Tyrion that reminded her about the bells. But whichever one of them, it was like, neither Tyrion nor John trusted her to not burn down King's Landing. And John still stood by her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it's exactly what he's been saying. He doesn't want it. He's never wanted it. He wants to be a follower. He doesn't want to be a leader. And now he's found somebody that's willing to lead him. And that's all he needs. That's all
Yeah.
he needs, to just be like, okay, I'm not the leader. I'll do whatever you say.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. He's just totally enabled all of this shit. And it
Yeah.
pisses me off because it's just such a huge character flaw.
Mm.
And think of all the people that are dying because
Yeah.
I mean,
But at
I-
least it's an earned flaw because he still
Yeah.
knows nothing.
oh
well,
my God.
you know, like I wouldn't
out of my
necessarily be
notes.
mad about him having that flaw if it didn't feel like the show was trying to pretend it's not a flaw.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Like
agree.
this whole
Like,
argument of like, oh, well, maybe it would actually be best to have a king who didn't want to be king. And I'm like,
no, it's not.
I'm not sure that's true.
Right.
Maybe
doesn't
just
care.
stop
Not
having kings.
working
Maybe
out.
work out some sort of a representative democracy or something.
Yeah, it's not working out so great in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
I don't think our president wanted to be
Yeah.
president and didn't
Yeah.
think it would actually happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But I don't think that we can undervalue. I mean, John is just like a total like lame sauce, but like you can't undervalue what Tyrion's contributing to all of this by pushing, their conversation in the war room, the way he gave her information and how he decided that her master of whispers or whatever his title was, you needed to know, the way he was talking to her was very like he would talk down to a child. And Varys did this, kind of like a similar thing, but he was more in contributing. He was so worried. Like he said something like, hope I'm wrong about her. But his betrayal is one of the things that triggers her to do what she does. She feels that she doesn't have anyone else.
Yeah.
Tyrion's disappointed her. Varys has disappointed her. John has disappointed her. Jorah's dead. It's like, I don't think she has blood riders anymore. There was just the one dude that was in the war, the one Dothraki guy that was in the war room at Dragonstone. So like they've all pushed her to, Miss Sunday's gone, and Grey Worm is right there. He was here for all of that.
All he wants is blood.
He wants blood. And it's just, she's been telling them all along she'll take it in blood and fire, and they just keep giving her reasons to do that. It's like, it's just really annoying to keep having the crazy label slapped, the Targaryen crazy slapped on it, because these men all contribute directly to it. And when they started talking down to her, it was just like, you guys, this is not going to go the way you want, because she's going to rebel against that the same way she's done every time. They're complicit.
Well, I mean, the problem, of course, too, is that, I think obviously everything's in context with what she does later, right? So, but at this point, there's a lot of people talking about this episode, and I think that there were some people initially who were wanting to try to say, I can't believe they would make her do this in a couple of episodes when, like, all along that hadn't been in her character at all. And then I think a lot of people rightfully said, what are you talking about? It has always been in her character.
Always,
yeah. Since season 1, this is exactly who she is. This is not new stuff. Now, what I think is true is that for most of the series run, they soft pedaled that stuff and they made her only use it against bad people. And, so it was like this drip, drip, drip. And then in the last couple of episodes, they turn on the fire hose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where a lot of people are sort of reacting to, is that it's not that it doesn't make sense that she would do what she did exactly, but the way it happens feels really clumsy.
Agreed.
Yeah. So the idea that her losing all of her advisors, she's lost 2 of her dragons now. They had this big war where she went up and saved the world and lost a lot of her forces. And it's like, maybe it was the right thing to do, but she feels like she's not getting any credit for that, or at least not enough. she is realizing all this time that even though she feels has the right to the throne, this idea that people would love her for it is just not coming true here in Westeros.
Yeah.
And
which she was told her whole life.
yeah,
They'll
that people await
welcome
your
you with
return.
open arms.
Yeah. And even if she didn't necessarily completely believe it, she didn't expect the complete reverse either necessarily. And she knows people are plotting against her. And, she said, it feels like, well, does she really love John? I don't know. That felt kind of unearned too, but that was not new in the last couple of episodes. There's that, but then all of her, she's losing all of her advisors. Like, so the idea that she's going to have some sort of a break here is, again, it's like you can point to all of the reasons she did it. And it's not that any of those are, I'm not saying they're good reasons to burn civilians alive,
plausible
but
reasons.
but like you can point to all of these things. It's like that does make sense, but it is also true that after a very gradual, slow build over a long period of time, they ramp it up pretty sharply towards the end by having a lot of things happen, and they don't really do a very good job, I don't think, of conveying exactly what her mental state is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she just goes and does this cold, frigid, sort of haunted, staring sort of thing, which does make her look unstable, right?
Yeah.
And she talks about how she can't trust anyone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the episode makes it all a framing like, oh, it's just that Targaryen madness.
Yeah.
Flipping a coin, it's one or the other. Guess it turned out that this one's crazy because women be crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so, like so the groundwork actually is there for her to do that, but then this episode makes it feel like it's not. It's this weird, clumsy execution where they actually did the development and then separated it, and so.
Yeah.
Unless we try to read her mind and inject all of the different things, and you shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and this just, we talked about this before, and I think a lot of people are reiterating this. I think Paulette said something to this effect in the chat of, it's one thing if we want to say, okay, well, you could have built up, like, instead of ramping it up so quickly, what if you had 4 or 5 episodes where she seems like she's really getting progressively less stable, and the show tried to put us in her shoes a little bit instead of only getting views of her from the perspective of the people who are afraid of her now.
Yeah.
Instead of, we put ourselves in her POV a bit more and spend a few more episodes showing that this building a bit more, making it a bit more gradual. I'm not even sure that they needed that so much as they needed it to just make more sense in the moment itself.
Yeah.
Because the execution of it was, I don't want to jump ahead, but just in this scene, we have Tyrion already acting like he's afraid of her. She has sussed out the entire chain of secrets. Who betrayed me? Well, Jon Snow, obviously, because he told his sisters, and Sansa told you, and then you told Varys, just like Sansa knew you would. And now Varys has betrayed me with Jon Snow. So Jon Snow betrayed me, and you're part of that chain. So,
yeah.
And it all went exactly how I said it would.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she is not wrong about that, right? Yeah, it's just... I think that they separated us from her POV completely. And they didn't make us feel what she's feeling. What they made us feel was the other characters being afraid of her. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. See in the chat, April O'Neill had a comment that I'm going to get to in a minute because we're going to talk about that exact thing in a second. Paulette said if she had gone a little burn them all at Winterfell, it would have felt a little less of a snap judgment at the time.
Yeah.
And Dandy
yeah.
completely agrees with Christiana. Nothing they do feels earned anymore. Everything's just too convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we had the big screed last episode about how they're working backwards and
exactly.
clumsily.
Yeah.
Very clumsily. And I'm pretty sure we said it last episode. It can't be said enough. They were authorized for 10 episodes. They made this choice. They did it to themselves.
Yeah.
They did it to us. They're fine. They're cashing their checks. They're fine.
Yeah. They're going to get to make Star Wars movies after this.
Right.
Oh, geez.
Instead of
I don't know, maybe that'll be fine. See, because the actual, I don't know that that's not happening anymore either. I'm not sure, but I think honestly it could be fine because the problem here is not so much that they are bad storytellers in and of it themselves, but that they started with someone else's story and we're building off of the framework that story establishes.
Yeah.
Now, they owned the show's story all along, but for 5 seasons, it was very much based on another person's writing. Whereas, towards the end, it's like it turns into something else. So maybe if they get to just tell their own story from the beginning, it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think also not just somebody else's writing, they were condensing somebody else's writing already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they should be really good at big blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
And telling a story and, a compact, if they get to start it the way they want and they have the same expectation all the way through, it could be great.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it could be fine. So just the fact that we're not necessarily loving these episodes, I think we can all take a step back to just recognize too, not to defend these episodes, but ending a story like this has got to be a pretty freaking thankless task.
Mm-hmm.
You're never, ever going to please everybody because people want contradictory things.
Of course. It does the conversation so I saw this interesting tweet thread that somebody wrote. I won't read the whole thing because it's like 25 tweets long, but basically comes down to the behind the scenes process of plotters versus pantsers.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing that I took from it is that, George R.R. was a plotter. He plotted everything. Did I get it backwards?
I think
he's one and they were the other, is what it comes down to, though. And the different styles are what is causing this problem right now. That and running out of his content, which they had been telling, using his mechanism, so to speak, with that slower pace. And meanwhile, they've got that, like you said, I think last episode, Chushu, they said 13 episodes. We're going to nail this story and put it to bed. And that they're just like going for that line, that spot.
To some extent, the mediums kind of demand that a little bit because for a book, it's easy to just have the story meander and you just follow your characters around in whatever they do. And it ends up with big, long, huge, sprawling book series. And that's easy to write because you can write anything you want. Mm-hmm. But when you're making a TV show, these big action set pieces are expensive. You have to decide way in advance what your big action set pieces are going to be and what's going to happen in them.
Totally. Yeah. So that's the challenge that they took on. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, I think we can agree that what they took on was a very ambitious challenge that would have been difficult for anyone to do.
Yeah.
I think
that's not to say they're doing a great job, but they're doing some things well. And
I agree. And I mean, overall, I'm still watching the show. Like I'm seeing people saying, I'm not even going to watch the last episode. Well, bullshit. I'm watching the last episode, as soon as I can.
Yeah.
But like, I want to see the story.
HBO will miss you. Oh wait, you're still paying for it.
I want to see the complete. Yeah, but I want to see what it is they're trying to get to. I want to see their complete full vision of it before I decide whether, I think this whole season was a waste. Because it's not just ending, ending the season is hard enough. ending the season and the series. I mean, how many shows do you love that they were given the chance to end it and they fumbled it, in your opinion, or even in society in general's opinion? You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot. And so it is absolutely hard to do. And it's all bundled up together with part of it was written for them and part of it they've, completely had to do on their own and decide whether or not they want to use George's, plot points and whatever. It's not easy, but it's still disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that doesn't minimize the disappointment that I feel. So
right, yeah. The fact that they took go ahead. Sorry.
I'm of the same mind though. I'm like, one second I'm defending them, and the next second I'm like, well, fuck those guys. It's like I'm just like, it's like an existential crisis with this show.
Yeah. But I mean, like, honestly, even though I think kind of where I started, the discussion today is kind of where I'm at right now, is that I sort of I got mad last week. And so this week it's just like, all right, well, it's going to be what it's going to be. So I can say, this works better for me. That works not as well. But I feel like I'm not emotionally invested anymore in the same way that I used to be.
That sucks.
Well, it sucks in one sense, but in the other sense, I actually enjoyed it more because I wasn't so fixated on it meeting all of my expectations.
Oh, well, I mean, I know it's not going to meet most of my expectations. There's very few that I have left. I wanted to see the Night King go down. Night King went down gloriously. We can nitpick a lot of things about that episode, but Arya got the killing blow, and if it had occurred to me as being slightly even possible, that's what I would have wished for. Because I didn't expect it until it happened.
Right.
So like they've really delivered on a lot of things this season, but I mean, I refuse to detach my emotions from this.
Yeah. Well,
I can't at this point.
Right. I still want to see how it's all going to turn out. And again, it's like, I did not hate this episode.
Yeah.
I think it had some clumsy execution of story points that I don't dislike. It's like, I think that that's an interesting direction to take the story. I don't think it was elegant in the way that it got there.
Yeah.
But I liked many things about it. There were many things about the episode that I liked. There were also parts that is just like, all right.
Yeah, fine.
So I guess that whole subplot was just a red herring, which I guess is fine because, we also have to remember that they're working in this, era where internet theories and Reddit fan crafting and all of that stuff is like real. So, this idea that they have to try to keep surprises in there means that they have to seed false rumors and stuff like that. So it's like, I don't know. It is what it is.
So she gives Tyrion one last chance. If you fail me again, it'll be your last. And of course, he immediately goes to commit treason.
Yeah. Like you do.
Yeah.
Then we get back to Varys.
Right.
And he hears somebody coming again, but he can tell the difference. Those are boots. And he burns his note and takes off his rings, which I'm thinking is a dual purpose payment.
Yeah.
And possibly some kind of signal.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that it was subtle, but the impression that I got was that he was leaving them for, his little birds, as kind of a last payment. But you're right that it might also be it
could trigger a chain of events.
They've taken me, so implement plan X, that sort of thing. I think it's also gotta be true that he already sent a bunch of those messages though, right? I mean, he had to have. Yeah.
He's had to have been doing it for days, I would imagine.
Yeah. Because we see him writing a message at the beginning with lots of scraps of paper on his desk, and then he is still writing another one in what seems like it was at least a day later.
He's probably sending them everywhere.
Yeah, I imagine that's something we'll discover next time. is that he actually said it a bunch, sent a bunch, and a lot of people know.
Yeah. And he is swiftly meted. Justice is swiftly meted out. Not much needs to be said. They know exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't even deny it, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And great shot with the darkness and everything with Drogon popping up right behind her.
Yeah.
Boom, out of nowhere.
That was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
I thought I saw a behind the scenes thing, and someone was relaying a conversation that they had with the actor Varys, and it resolved one of my curiosities when watching, when Tyrion and Varys are kind of saying goodbye to each other, and Tyrion reaches out and touches Varys, and he looks like stunned or shocked, and I was like, well, that's kind of a weird reaction. Well, they had to reshoot it a couple of times, and the reason that the actor made that choice was because it was the first time anyone had touched him, like in the whole entirety of it. Yeah. And it was just like a really profound thing for him that would have meant more than Tyrion's words.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved when the dragon came out behind her. I thought it was, like, in hindsight, it was like a really great reminder that dragon is always right there behind her, but also like within her, like that low rumble, it was already there and we didn't even see it. I thought that was like a really good sign of what could come, like it's right there.
I thought that was really cool.
Anytime. Yeah, it was brilliant.
I mean, like, I like Varys. It's sad to see him go, especially in this context, but like, but yeah, that was cool. That was a cool scene.
Yeah.
He didn't scream.
It was
right?
Gonna happen.
No,
he was silent.
Wow. Yeah.
The bull's on that guy.
Mike McCauley says the most soft-spoken Dracarys in the series.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I feel like my one wondering about it is that Jon seemed awfully stoic in the moment. Like, it's one thing for him to accept the necessity of this because, frankly, obviously he knows Varys committed treason and Jon is all in at this point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, executing somebody by burning them alive was kind of a thing with the Starks, and didn't seem to be like any sort of a like recognition of that.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't really object to that, because I think with both Tyrion and Jon, what they needed, what they wanted to do is use this episode to get them to the point of realizing that she needs to be stopped, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we have to have them go all Obi-Wan, you were the chosen one, you were my brother.
Yeah.
Right. What clicked in my head, or what I don't know. So, wild ass prediction. I think she's gonna call Tyrion out for treason. She's gonna go to have him executed, and Jon's gonna stop it, and that's what's gonna set off their whole conflict out in the open.
I think their conflict is definitely on the brink of happening after this last episode.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing everything happening, and the fact that jumping ahead again, but the fact that he turned and left the battle was very telling. But
honestly, the one thing that we'll have to see how they justify it, but like, how would she even know what Tyrion did unless he tells her? Because Cersei and Jaime are buried under hundreds of thousands of pounds of rubble. Now, maybe what they'll do is they'll say, we have to confirm that she's dead, so we're going to set people to excavating until we find their bodies, and then we'll say, oh, there's Jaime, therefore something, maybe that's what they'll do, but that's...
Yeah. I thought he was imprisoned at a camp. So
he was on Dragonstone.
I suppose that's
I thought he was at Dragonstone.
I assume she'll go back to Dragonstone. I don't think she.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
In King's Landing.
I don't think he was at Dragonstone though. He was at the camp with the Northern armies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I still think she's deaf. Go find out.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
so that makes sense. I don't know why I was thinking she would have had to find him in King's Landing. All she would have to know is he wasn't where he was prisoner before.
Right.
So,
So
yeah,
the whole
okay,
thing
never
for me,
mind.
I mean, he
Yeah.
tells the Unsullied, so it's a little comic thing about, he still can't speak Valerian, but, you know, hey, I'm in charge, chain of command, and they're like, cool. Like, they're
Mhm.
not going to check in with their supervisor. And so she's clearly going to know he was the one who did it. Well, although
Yeah.
they may all.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I just thought that was kind of silly. So first, of course, he asks Davos to do something. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's set up the boat for Cersei or to smuggle him
Yeah,
into the prison camp. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it was the boat, I think, is
I
it,
think
but
so. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that
Davos
must
helps
be
him
it.
do one or the other, and then they have they have a great moment together. I
Yeah.
think a really great last moment.
Right.
Another great last moment between brothers because
Right.
they've
Yeah.
had a couple.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the most obvious parallel, of course, is Jamie coming to see Tyrion in prison when he was there for supposedly killing Joffrey, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, like, it's an obvious sort of parallel to that scene, and I agree. I really liked this scene too, and we could debate what's the wisdom of the various characters. Is it smart for Tyrion to be doing this? What's the actual plan? Like, we could debate the nitpicks of that.
Yeah.
But if we want to talk about a scene with the two actors there playing, what both characters know is going to be a final goodbye between these two brothers that love each other, I really like that. That's another
Yeah.
example of a scene that I really enjoyed. I sincerely
Mhm.
liked it.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's always been a relationship that I've been happy to watch. Like whenever they're together, it's,
Yeah.
a really good, I think, a really good scene. They really bring it out in each other.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
We
Jamie liking Tyrion was actually, for us, the very first sign that Jamie wasn't all bad, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
that was, long before we got any of the other stuff with him and Brienne, for example.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tyrion really hopes Jamie will convince Cersei to flee to Essos and save the city.
Hmm.
He's just, I don't know, seems like grasping at straws in a way, but like this is all he can do at this point, right? All he can do is set these seeds to people and plant this thing about the bells. And
Yeah.
my immediate first worry in this scene was when he was saying, have them ring the bells, open the gates,
Hmm.
everything's gonna be cool. Is that, oh, okay, now there's going to be a fake surrender because Jamie's going to go to Cersei and say, hey, they just said, hey,
Hmm.
we surrender,
Yeah.
everything's cool. And I was like, oh fuck, and now Tyrion's really going to get it because
Hmm.
that'll be the ultimate betrayal. But of course
Yeah.
that didn't happen.
Well, and like that's another sort of notch on the side of why Danny might have been doing that. Is like,
Mhm.
okay, sure, they're ringing the bells because someone told them that would make our attack stop. But like, look at what happened to her in Marine, right? Like, she took the city. Supposedly, she did it the right way with the slaves rising up against the masters, and she was
Yeah.
the breaker of chains. And yet, still, they worked to undermine her. They killed her people by sneaking around in the back alleys. Like,
Mhm.
it's more stuff that could be added into that stew of thoughts that led to her making the decision she made. But the show doesn't really connect those dots for us.
Yeah.
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 I think the next thing was Danny and John at Dragonstone.
Did we do the scene with Grey Worm and Danny? Did we miss that one?
Possibly. I don't
I
know that
wouldn't.
I found
I
it.
don't know if we'd say missing it.
Go for it.
No,
What did you see? Yeah. What did you?
The scene with Daenerys and Grey Worm, and Missandei's slave collar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Her only possession, the last thing.
The only-
well, but why was that Missandei's only possession? Is her
right,
slave collar? Why?
right,
Why?
yeah.
That doesn't make
Right.
any sense.
It was the only
You're
thing
not
that she
paying her,
brought with
Khaleesi?
her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that one I liked the emotion that they were kind of going for, but boy, that just the concept that her one possession that she brought from Essos is her former slave collar, which she hung on to for
Years.
and here let's give it to this other former slave because he's
Right.
going to do what? Hang it on his wall that he doesn't have?
I think
mean,
I think
Yeah,
that
I think-
was her passing a signal to him of what her intention was, and
you
I
know,
think he was
maybe.
there for it.
Yeah. So I guess I don't necessarily dispute her actions or intentions or emotions in the moment. It's more the writing thing that somehow Missandei's only possession was the slave collar. Like, why does she even still have it? I don't buy at all that
Right.
Missandei would have sentimentally held on to her old slave collar. Like, I don't buy that. That doesn't
Certainly not
sound
the way
right to
Grey
me.
Worm felt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like what they were saying is they want to have something of Missandei's and they couldn't think of anything because they didn't actually ever give her character anything to own. So
Exactly. There was no depth there for us to identify as being, oh, of course that's Miss Sunday's. No, all we know about her is that she was a slave.
And why? Because they weren't best friends. She was an employee.
Yeah. Apparently not paid very well because she didn't have nothing.
Hi, Nettie.
Hi, Nettie.
Hello.
Welcome.
And it sounds like I came in right on time.
So glad you could join us.
So yeah, the quick recap is that we did talk a lot about understanding that ending a story like this has got to be very difficult, which doesn't mean necessarily that we think they did a great job, but nonetheless that maybe there were some parts of this that were not terrible. And we're going to kind of talk through our complicated feelings.
It makes me wonder. I mean, man, I wonder if they wish they had like 4 more episodes. Oh, wait.
Exactly.
They did it to
Mhm.
themselves. No, I
did.
just want to tack on to that whole Missandei thing. That scene to me says more than anything. Daenerys, you didn't care for her as much as you thought you did,
Yeah.
in the sense that you did not show her time or affection when she was alive. If that was her only possession, and you thought her collar was the important thing to give to Grey Worm, like you didn't get her. You did not get her
Yeah.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I was saying was that I think that she specifically gave it to him because she wanted to kind of signal to him where her head was at, what her intentions were for the battle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, it's more evidence
Apparently
to
not.
support the see, but what it is though, other than me thinking that the writing is clumsy, that's the item that they chose to use for the scene in writing it, because this is where I talked about this a little bit last week, where a switch is kind of flipped in my brain to the point where frequently I am not trying to defend or analyze why would this character do this. It's more like, why would the writers decide to have the character do this?
Mhm.
Right. And so the slave collar is a thing where I want to say, not why did Daenerys use the slave collar for this symbolic way, but why did the writers decide that Missandei's only possession was a slave collar?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's frustrating. But at the same time, I think what we can take is, like the intent of the scene, I think, is to communicate to us that Dany and Grey Worm are on the same page, which is Missandei's last words were Dracarys, let's do this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People are going to try to get in our way, but I think, so like, again, not to defend the actual execution of it, but anyone whose reaction was, I can't believe that Dany would do this. There was no build up to that at all. No development. It's like, no, that's really just not true. There
Yeah.
was tons and tons of development leading up to this point.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't make the execution of it unclumsy, but there was lots of development to it.
I'm sure you guys already talked about this, but can I just say how happy I was when I was watching Varys get killed?
How happy you were?
Oh yeah, because I was like, as soon as he had that conversation with Tyrion last week, I was like, time to kill Varys. Why? And
Well,
and earlier I said, why isn't Varys dead? So yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, I like that scene.
Mm.
It was brutal. It wasn't a scene that I had a problem with, and I really did enjoy how, it's all dark and then all of a sudden out comes this dragon head all
Yeah.
menacingly like alien,
Yeah.
so I did enjoy that part of it. And I think if what the writers are trying to tell us is we want to set a tone, we want to set the tone for, this is what's happening and this is where we're headed. I thought it was good. I have a lot of problems with other parts of the episode, but I was good with that.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's like everyone in the episode knew how likely it was that Danny was going to do this.
Even
And-
him, he took off his rings.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, he knew that, but I just mean like even in the scene, like in the small council room, the throne room from Dragonstone. After that, where like he has his sort of last ditch plea of, okay, so I know what you're planning, and I'm not even going to try to tell you not to do it, but maybe just in case they decide to surrender, we can actually accept their surrender instead of just still killing everybody.
Mm.
Is that something that would maybe kind of sort of be okay with you? And she kind of goes, yeah, maybe. By the way, I have your brother prisoner.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think at that point, Tyrion was hoping that maybe her agreement to abide by the surrender would be enough.
I think he believed it right until he saw that it wasn't happening. I think he really believed that she would accept their surrender, that he had faith in her. If he could pull it off, he could save the city, and that she was worth it.
Yeah.
Because
he wanted to believe it.
Yeah,
he wanted to believe it. He wanted
whether
to
or
believe
not
it.
he should have believed it is another story, because there really is that look of betrayal on his face, and just, I can't believe I'm seeing this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he trusted her to do the right thing. I think he was watching her so closely when he was that one shot of him looking up at her on the dragon and the bells are ringing and he's watching her. Like, that wasn't hope in his eyes. That was like, oh, fuck, what's she going to do? What's she going to do?
It was kind of like, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, oh,
Please
please.
be the queen I think you are.
I don't think he had faith in her because he reminded her as if she were a little girl. Now, remember, bells mean surrender.
Yeah.
And she just, nope, that's not what that meant to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing we were jumping back into was Danny and John before all of that goes down.
Right.
With her trying to rally him back, making one last attempt at romance, like, we're still a thing here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be loved. And then I think this is her thinking, they could still get married and not rule together, but at least have that. And he's too weirded out by it. And to me, this is the turning point in her with the bells and everything. When the bells are ringing, it's like the gravity of it finally happened hits her. The bells are ringing. This is it. I did it. We're here.
Yeah.
But I can't hold it because of John.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be fear. And the only way they're going to fear me is if they truly see what I can do.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we don't jump to the
bells.
Well,
we
but
talk so much about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you though that my only frustration with this scene is that it makes it a little bit too easy to take a superficial view of her motivations as being sort of, I'm crazy because my boyfriend dumped me. You know what I mean? I think there is way more to it than that. But that by framing sort of the moment as being when her boyfriend dumps her.
Well, I mean, I
think she was over. I think she was over the romance or whatever. I think this was her last ditch effort to be accepted by the Seven Kingdoms one way or the other way. Or
Yeah.
maybe,
Well,
that's the coin flip,
no,
right?
okay.
And he would-
Don't
I-
misinterpret me. Sorry. What I'm saying is not that that's what happened. I'm saying that by using this as the means to show us her making that decision, it makes it too easy to view the whole thing as being about that.
Mhm.
When I agree with you that there is more to it, but the superficial viewing of it is that I'm in love with you, but you don't love me back, so I'm going to burn down the city. And I know that there's more to it than that,
Right.
but the show is not great at telling us that it's more than that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I
I
mean-
have to try to get in her head to explain
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
She did just say it's gonna be love or it's gonna be fire, and then she kissed him and he rejected her, and she said, "Okay, fire." So I feel like
think
they
she's
made that
saying
kind of
fear,
clear.
but
well,
yeah.
Yeah.
whatever. But I
Same
think
thing.
that this scene is another example of why he's not fit to be on the Iron Throne, unless he's just the last man standing. Is because just like when he was in the dragon pits and Cersei said, "Will you agree to be, unresolved to who you'll side with until after the threat is dealt with?" And he said, "Oh, I already bent the knee." And he was, he wasn't the most diplomatic in that moment. And she said, "You should have just said it. It would have been fine." And I feel like this was another example of he could have just said, "Sure, Auntie, let's make out," and just rolled with it, and maybe that wouldn't have happened. Not again. And I'm not saying that, oh, it's her boyfriend, but it is lame that they did it in that order. There were so many things that had her to that point.
Yeah.
I don't think they needed that to be the trigger. That was extremely disappointing. But if he had rolled with it, and see, here's the thing is like it's a problem I have with him is that he will go along with anything unless it looks dishonorable. That's the only point when he'll stop and put on the brakes if he's not the leader.
Right.
John
That's
And
how
then gets
wants
back
to
in his
be.
head.
John wants to be led. He would prefer.
That's what
to
I was
be
saying
led.
earlier.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he finally found somebody that wanted him to follow rather than lead, and he won't. That's why he struggles.
Yeah, and he was willing to do almost anything. Mike McCauley in the chat said when she said "looks like fear," it was over. And it's like the whole bent. And I'm going to paraphrase what Paulette was saying in the chat because she didn't like the words that she used. But the whole bent, and I agree with her. The whole bent that like part of this is her being spurned romantically has a part to play is supposed to make us feel better about her genocide. I don't think so. Like
it's more explainable when in Hollywood context, not Hollywood, but HBO, but like in the big mass media stuff, that's the norm.
Yeah. So I think that what's frustrating about the way things played out in this episode is not that there isn't this layered development and character development and background stuff that all leads to her making the decision she does. The problem is that the show is actually not good at communicating any of that.
Yeah.
You really have to sort of read between the lines to get any of that. Because if you're just taking text as text and not looking for the subtext, it feels more like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. Subtlety is good and foreshadowing is fine. But if we have to come up with these excuses and these examples, then they didn't do their job right. They needed to show it to us. We said it before, it's a TV show and yet they're still telling us, not showing us. And everybody knows you show, you don't tell. The same thing happened here. I mean, for instance, during the burning, and a couple of characters have visual reactions, but nobody talks about it. Nothing happens. The green explosions. I don't think Chooch was hemming me to
Sorry.
shut me up.
No.
It was kind of funny. But there's like these green explosions, which to me as a viewer, I'm like, oh, did Cersei like plant bombs throughout the city anticipating this? But you know what? I shouldn't have to say that. I shouldn't have to come up with that. And the same thing here. I shouldn't have to come up with why did she switch? What made all of this happen? It's they failed. They failed in
Yeah.
their job, and they could have done better. My big problem is when she does start burning, it's like she's trying to avoid burning Cersei,
Yeah.
and all she
Yeah.
wants to do is burn the people. And
Yeah.
Right.
they've been building this story, and I'm sorry if I'm a little ranty here, but they've been building this story about the fact that the people of King's Landing are fickle. The whole point of the High Sparrow and the Shame Bell and everything is that you need the people's support. Tyrion always talks about how you need the people's support. And if they had taken a couple episodes and they had the people of King's Landing turn on Dany and show her, but she's had no interaction with them whatsoever. So
Yeah.
why would she do this? That to me is what angers me, because they had this storyline, like it looked like it was going in that direction and it could have paid off in the spectacle that they wanted, but they just decided, no, we're going to do 6 episodes. We're not going to show you that. And we're not going to actually give you a reason. We're just going to have her burn people for the sake of burning people and ignoring her actual target.
Yeah. Like and for that matter, her actual target, you can make another argument there of saying, sure, let's raze to the ground her family's ancestral home that contains the Iron Throne that is supposedly the point of all this.
Yeah. And the dragon skulls.
Yeah. But like, I think what it comes down to, I mean, obviously we're kind of like, that's the big moment that we all want to talk about. I mean, that's what the episode is named after, right? So I think that again, it's this problem where if you sit and think about it for a little bit, and you think about all the things that happened with her recently, and you think about all of the lessons she's learned from people and all her experiences throughout her life, you can really get yourself into her mindset pretty well to understand, if not condone or defend, to understand why she makes the decision she does. And it is in touch with her character, and it does make sense, even if it's awful from our perspective. But the problem is, what the show shows us is bells are ringing, looking around. Oh, there's the Red Keep. Makes me really mad. Now I'm going to spend 20 minutes burning everything but the Red Keep.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what the show shows us. And so if we want to, we can delve into all that stuff and understand where she's coming from. But we have to dig into all of that because the show doesn't tell us that stuff.
Yeah.
The show is not good at communicating those ideas to us. We have to do the work.
They did a better job communicating it in the trailer for this episode that just aired, because they showed her reacting to Missandei, and then they did a voiceover track of different things that had happened to her. And the last one was Viserys saying, something about the dragon, and it's just like, and to me, it's like, why didn't you put that in the fucking episode? Yes, it's cheesy. Yes, it's ABC, CBS sitcom, but goddamn, put it in there, because we're like you guys are saying, we're having to work too hard.
Yeah.
Mike McCauley
apparently
says,
Drogon has an unlimited fuel supply.
Yeah.
I kept waiting for him to run
She's like,
out.
she's mowing the lawn and she's just going.
Yeah.
That's a great graphic there, Chooch. I
That was
kept waiting for
meme.
when she got to the castle that like Drogon wouldn't have fire. Like, I was like, is this the point? Are they wanting him to run out now?
Yeah.
Mike McCauley says the show doesn't do a good job of showing. This is so true. This is a recurring theme the last couple of seasons, and one of my biggest frustrations.
Yeah. Especially with the budget they have. They could do so much more if they just focused on what was like the story, not the visuals,
Well, I said earlier this season that like the battles tends to not actually be my favorite episodes anyway. They're exciting, but they really just serve as keeping the tension up to produce all of the quieter character moments that are what I've always really liked about the show.
Yeah.
But I think you really hit on something important there, Viv, when you talked about that preview, because I agree that was actually pretty effective. And I'm sure that the reason they didn't do something quite like that in the episode is just because people hearing voiceover of past lines and stuff is definitely not something that's been in sort of the style palette of the show.
Yep. Yep.
But whether they handled it like that or not, that storytelling piece is what's missing from the episode of putting us in her head. What is she thinking in that moment? What is she feeling? What are the memories she's reliving that allow her to be in that headspace? We have to do all the work because the show doesn't tell us. It just shows her looking mad at the city skyline.
Right.
And so that's, I think, what's frustrating to me. Well, and it's actually, I said at the beginning of this episode, I do not hate the story development that this is the decision she makes.
Yeah, no.
It's sad,
Yeah.
but I feel like it is earned from character and storytelling perspective, with the caveat that the actual moment of her decision is very clumsy because they don't put us in her headspace at all. It's one thing to say after she makes this decision. I think it is actually really smart that after that moment, she's never again seen from her perspective. It's always from the ground level of just her way off on the dragon doing what she's doing because she's this unstoppable monster at this point. I think that's a good creative decision, but I think that we needed something to get us in her headspace right at that moment. But the show had us in the headspace of everyone afraid of her for the last episode and a half now.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that, like many people have been saying, like, it's not surprising that Daenerys gets to this point. It really was leading up to this. There really were a lot of clues and so forth. But I'm going to agree with everything everybody said. It's the execution. And, when the bells ring and she's like panting, and then you see that look on her face where it's like, fuck it, I'm doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't throw things at my screen. I didn't go, oh, come on, where did that come from? Like, I got that. I just, I have a lot of criticisms on some things that came before, but a lot of how she then executes it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike McCauley says exactly, at least maybe a couple flashback thoughts to know what she was thinking before acting out.
Right.
Yeah.
If nothing else, the fact that she starts burning the city first.
Yeah,
part of what feels.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing if she goes after the castle first because that's where her enemy is, but then once she's done that, and she's seeing the destruction, like she just can't stop herself. She's just in a red haze at that point, and then she continues on to burn the city. Like, I feel like that would have played better.
Yep.
I also feel like all they would need is a scene of something about how Daenerys is sending a message to the people, like, if you want to be spared, leave the city now. I will protect you, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And then having them reject her.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to warrant her wanting to go after people.
Right.
Like, it was like she was purposefully avoiding soldiers and going after small folk.
Yeah.
I feel like it didn't start that way. Like, because there was the first time we see her do one of the streets, we do see there are soldiers in the street amongst the other people running away. And that's where she starts. But then after that, it just starts becoming burning anything that moves.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, I don't even necessarily hate that direction, except that the show really didn't give us any kind of a sense of why would she do that before going after Cersei.
Yeah. That doesn't make, like, oh, I'm really mad at you, but I'm going to smack this person next to me for no reason.
Now, to some extent, we could even perhaps say the reason she did that is because that's what everybody who betrayed her told her not to do. And she's not going to let herself be pinned down. Like, what was the last thing Missandei said? Was Dracarys. What was the last thing that said? Olenna said, just be a dragon.
Yeah.
Right. And now all these smaller people who don't even have loyalty to her, they're telling her, don't burn the city. Don't burn the city. Yeah. Well, I'm going to burn the city. And so we could even see that maybe that's the thought process.
Or
for
like
doing
the
that.
old school
Except,
torturers where you
Yeah.
show the instruments, so Cersei
Yeah.
knows what's coming for her.
right.
Yeah.
But again, without the show doesn't give us anything to
Mhm.
go
Yeah.
on there. So we have to try to speculate about what she might have been thinking.
Dan D says earlier she told Tyrion that mercy is her strength. What happened to that? Yeah.
Well,
well, no, she said for future generations
Yeah.
to live
Yeah.
without tyranny. She was
Uh-huh.
not talking about these. I don't think she was talking
No.
about the current citizens.
Right.
She was
She
talking
had
about
justified it away. Yeah.
what comes
Yeah.
after she breaks the wheel, so to speak, or drains the swamp, or whatever she plans on
yeah, yeah.
doing. Sorry,
Well,
I had
mean,
to.
that whole line was absolutely set up to be a huh? Oh,
Yeah.
sort of reaction from Tyrion, right? Like,
Right.
mercy is our strength. And he's like, yes, it's our strength, right? To future generations. Oh, yeah. Womp,
Yeah.
womp. Yeah.
And I'm gonna be with Mike here. Mike says at first I was actually cheering her on with her battle tactics, systematically taking out the scorpions and etc. And then she escalated into total annihilation.
Yeah.
I'll also say that one scene where they're at the gates and then the explosion comes from inside out.
Yeah.
I mean that was
Oh.
pretty amazing.
I want to just briefly take a tangent from what we were talking about there and talk about that sequence and just remember how earlier in the season I expressed how weird it was that they made the decision to actually cast an actor and give a name to the
Yeah.
leader of the Golden Company.
Oh,
Like,
Yeah.
they must have some sort of a plan for that character, right? Because otherwise, why does he even need to exist? And clearly the answer is so that he can have a cool horse for Arya to find at the end of the episode. There is
Yep.
no other reason.
Yeah.
Wearing those fancy pants.
Yeah.
Mike
Oh,
says
man.
money well spent, rolling eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some recap I read that was talking about, Arya's whole bit there, which we'll get to, I'm sure, but
Mhm.
saying, sure, she discovered, the horrors of full out war and atrocity and genocide and nihilism, that nothing you do can save anybody, but hey, free horse.
Well, I think it's supposed to be a pale mare, so
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
so I think so just my point was just amusement that they bothered to say, this is Captain Harry Strickland. His name is, he's the leader of the Golden Company, and we cast handsome McBlondie face, and here he is standing in his armor, and he stands in front of a crowd, and clearly there must be a reason for him to actually be a character instead of just, here's the Golden Company, don't they look cool?
Yeah.
But no, so all it is for him to stand there and go, uh-oh.
Well, God damn it! If he brought the damn elephants, they would have done they would have been fine. It was
Clearly
all about
that
the
was the
elephants.
problem. Yeah.
Cersei was right.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like the whole action sequence leading up to the bells, right? I mean, all of that stuff, like, we can get mad about why was it so easy for Euron to take out the second dragon last time? He hits 3 shots in a row out of nowhere.
Yep.
And then and then Daenerys feels like she has to actually fly away and not do anything. And yet this time, it's like, they can't touch her, and it's just, complete lopsided. She destroys everything.
And there are a couple of things that they did well in that scene. I will give them credit for. For instance, she arrives in a tactical position. She comes from the direction of the sun so that nobody can see where she's coming from. That makes sense. But then when she starts changing direction, it no longer makes sense. And it's taking way too long to load these scorpions. Then she flies really low, so they have to aim the scorpions down. Then she flies up, she takes some of them out. And then they have to take the time to raise them up. So she's changing the angle there. And that makes sense. But there was way too much of, I'm going to burn just some of these scorpions, and then I'm going to come back for the others, and then I'll come back for these, and nobody gets a shot off.
Yeah.
But they were fine taking her out before.
I think we have to intuit that it was the planning before, like, because they were taken by surprise and because they didn't know the scorpions existed, though. What the fuck's your job, Ferris?
Yeah.
How could they not know they existed?
Well, especially since they almost lost a dragon to one back at the last
Yeah.
battle. But anyway,
Right,
okay.
yeah. So so
They had no scouts. Oh,
finally having air
Yeah.
tactics makes sense, kind of, because they were surprised before.
I think that there's all. Oh, so I didn't mean to cut you off, but
I think it just shows that she's actually using what the dragon has. She's using the agility. She's using the sun.
Yeah.
And that's the way that first battle would have gone if she had been expecting that it was a possibility.
Yeah.
I think something to be said too for her commitment, because she was going in to attack last time, but then wavered and hesitated, pulled off. This time she's in it.
Yeah.
She's committed. And so I think there's something to be said for that. And what I was actually going to say is, even though we can nitpick just why it was so hard last time and so easy this time, I didn't really have a problem with that. It was sort of very exciting. It did sort of lead to this point where seemed like it was exciting, but very easy to get to that point with the bells, to the point where I was kind of like, okay, well, that happened too fast. So we definitely know what's going to happen for the rest of this episode. But yeah, so a lot of that was very exciting. I agree, especially that front gate blasting outward behind the Golden Company, and then having the Golden Company just completely get routed. And
then run down by the Dothraki.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that I thought was actually really cool.
Yeah.
We of course see Euron just jump into the water, so we know he's not gone for good. So
yeah.
He's going to miraculously show up just in the very secret location where Jaime was planning to sneak into the castle. Like, all right, okay.
Yeah. That's where I assume we would jump to next too. Yeah.
Okay.
Just before we get there, I do want to complain. I'm going to be a bit of a grump sometimes.
Yeah.
I know we've seen it before, and I've probably complained about it before. I really hate how they go to the ambushing Indian trope with the Dothraki, I swear they just took the audio from an old Western movie and put it in there for that scene. And I'm not a fan of that trope, and there's so many implications. And if you want to know, go check it out on, I think it's like Native American News Today or something. They did a really great article over the hiatus, but I'm really tired of that. And it seems so obvious in this scene that it took me out, and I was cringing so hard. So let's go to stupid boy Euron. I hate him.
Yeah.
I hate Euron in the show, by the way. In the books,
well,
Euron is a whole different person.
Yeah, he's pretty hateable there, but for like
different
intentional
reasons.
Yeah.
I can't find it quickly, but I read a meme to Jooch over the weekend, and it was like book Euron, and it's like 3 sentences that are very eloquent and poetic and yada yada yada. And then the other side was, TV show Euron, lol my dick. And then this goofy ass
picture of Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, Jack Sparrow with lol my dick. And the other one was like this really beautiful artistic rendering. And it's like, that's pretty much Yeah.
Yeah, so the not only did it make no sense how Euron, unless the explanation is literally it's just a complete random coincidence that he happened to wash up in that specific spot just as Jaime was going that way. Now, on the one hand, I did actually really I thought it was pretty clever, the whole thing of Tyrion had told Jaime, this is how you'll get out of the Red Keep. And then when he ended up locked out because they closed the gates, he says, oh, I will go in the other way. I thought that was actually pretty clever. Yes, but the fact that Euron is just somehow there, it's like, okay, whatever. And I was also irritated that the whole plot line of who's really the father of Cersei's baby, like that whole thing of first of all, we still never got anything other than Cersei's word for it that she was ever pregnant in the first place.
Yeah.
I
guess Qyburn said so, but in it, well, maybe. Okay. But the
but
point
again,
is,
they didn't tell us. I mean, I'm guessing. I thought I saw a baby bump. I don't know.
And even if I think it was true just based on what she was saying when she would have no reason to lie anymore. It's but I think she was pregnant. But again, if they wanted her to actually be pregnant, then why leave it ambiguous for so long? That's stupid. It's bad storytelling because it's just confusing. but also this whole thing of Jamie knows she was pregnant. Euron thinks it's his, but it's actually got to be Jamie's. So like nothing comes of that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thought for sure Euron would gloat about
Like he gloats about sleeping with her and says nothing about the baby. It was the perfect opportunity to just have an exchange of lines of like, oh, I put a baby in her belly. It's like, no, you didn't. It was actually mine. They could have done something like that, but no, they just dropped it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Paulette calls Euron Captain Plutonium.
Yeah.
And Mike says, I'm sorry, but I thought the whole Euron Jamie scene was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Euron could have easily been taken out in the naval attack. Agreed. Like, let's spend extra time on, as Christiana said, nothing, because there's no payoff.
Yeah.
Right.
He could have gotten hurt on his way up. Like,
he didn't even have to be hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he was hurt, other than the fact Cersei talks about it, doesn't actually contribute to the plot in any way.
It was to give Euron one final cool line. I'm the guy who killed Jamie Lannister.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that cool because technically he didn't.
Yeah.
So,
right. But in his mind, that's how he goes out.
Yeah.
And nobody would ever know anyways.
I saw some people complaining that Jamie would not have left him alive, even dying. But I feel like, no, he's in a hurry. He's trying to get
in a hurry. He doesn't care.
Yeah, so I didn't have a problem with that, but I agree that I didn't really feel like Euron versus Jamie was a fight that I was dying to see. And, I mean, I guess it was fine.
It was just like,
you could have just cut that. Yeah, you could have just cut that entire scene and it would have made no difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe
asking for it.
I think it was maybe a way to justify why Jamie wasn't able to rescue Cersei. Like, we want him to die in there. Okay, well, he's one-handed. Well, that's not enough. Well, the building's falling and then everything's on fire. No, that's not enough. He's Superman. We got to stab him a couple times too. Mm-hmm. And then make sure everybody knows that Euron's dead, we think. Because they still didn't show it to us.
I think they did. Too much in love with Jamie.
Yeah, they didn't hold on it long, but I think he is meant to be dying just as he says, I'm the man who killed Jamie Lannister, and then he kind of just goes still. And they don't hold on it very long, but I think that's the intent.
I actually saw somebody saying that she doesn't know if Jamie and Cersei are alive or dead. I'm like, literally fucking fell on their heads, but because they didn't see dead bodies, they don't believe. That's where we are. And I only say that as the point of that's where we are with this show is we're having to speculate, or at least some people are having to speculate that deep.
And honestly, if they show up alive in the next episode, I think we're all going to just be like, that's cheating.
No, there's no way. They wouldn't do that.
I also feel like there's not even any point in that.
Yeah.
Right? No. Like what they're going to show up alive again for what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
they've already closed that thread. That's what they're trying to do.
I agree though in the or I guess I'm not agreeing so much as raising something that having the castle fall on their heads in the crypt is kind of like the least visually interesting possible way they could have had those two characters die.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, maybe they were trying to go with some sort of poetry that like Cersei was so determined to hold on to the castle and she stayed there until it fell in on her head, I guess. But I mean, all it was is here, let's have them dimly lit in a cavern, and then the screen goes black because rocks fall from the ceiling.
The final rains of Castamere.
We don't have them falling from a tower. We don't have them burned up with fire. We don't even have them bleeding to death in each other's arms or something like that. It's like, nope, just.
Yep.
So yeah, it's like, I don't hate the story development of it turns out that even after all of the, progress that Jamie made, he just could not pull his psyche away from his twin and had to go back to her. It's sad, but I buy it.
Yeah. I mean, they've been dropping hints for that the whole time too.
It makes me retroactively even more pissed with Jamie for what he did to Brienne, because it's like, hey man, you couldn't have figured that out before you slept with her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was mad about that last week. I don't have time for it anymore. I don't hate
I
the
laugh
idea.
because I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't hate the idea that he wanted to go back to Cersei and that they died together. I think that a lot of that scene between them actually was really interesting, and I kind of really liked it, except that I feel like the only reason they made Cersei pregnant was so that she could cry just before she dies that she wants her baby to live, and then whoops, kill her anyway, lol.
Yeah, make
Yeah.
her sympathetic and kill her.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the
And
last thing her
also-
saying is, I want to live.
And yeah, but I think that the thing that makes that believable for all of us is the fact that she's pregnant.
Right.
And
But
that, you know, he would want to try because all of his other kids died and he didn't really show any kind of parenting or fathering, kind of nurturing towards them while they were alive for obvious
Yeah.
reasons. But I
Mhm.
mean, I think he wanted, you know, I mean, for all the things that you've said, but also like, he just wanted that baby to live, maybe. Because even Tyrion mentioned it, you know?
Maybe.
Honestly, at this point, like Tyrion cares about the kid and Cersei cares about the kid a bit. I don't think Jamie cares at all. To Jamie, the kid is an afterthought. If
Yeah.
anything, it's he had to come back and like so there's this one thing we get a couple in the books, we get a couple Cersei chapters. And in the Cersei chapters, you get inside her head. And when she talks about being with Jamie, she's like, it's not incest because he's just another part of me.
Right.
Mhm.
And I can see again that maybe there's a couple of things in this episode that I think could pay off better in a book than it
Mhm.
will on screen because you get that internal dialogue. I could see that Jamie is driven to get back to his twin because he also believes, like,
Yeah.
while he may not have believed as strongly as Cersei did that they were part of the same person, when it comes down to it, he's like, I got to get back to her
Yeah.
because I can't let my other half die without me.
Yeah.
And that because they're twins, they really believe that they're the same person. I don't think, and maybe it's the acting of Nicola Castor-Waldau or whatever, but I just did not see that Jamie actually
Yeah.
cared about the baby.
You know
He's
what?
even the one who says, "Do you think it's real?"
Mm-hmm.
He
Yeah.
never even touched her stomach or anything like that. Now
Yeah,
that I think about it.
I don't think Jamie cared about the baby at all. I agree.
Yeah.
There was never a point in the whole series where he seemed to have any sincere um uh fatherly love for any of his
Yeah.
kids.
Marcella, when she was dying, for God's
Right.
sake.
That was manipulative by the
right before she died, actually.
Well, and it was also like it was only then, like in that moment, he kind of felt it then, but it was like a surprise to him when he felt it.
Yeah.
yeah.
And you know, but like other than that, you know, like you know, we can retroactively decide whether it was consensual or not, but he and Cersei have sex at Joffrey's tomb
Yeah.
Yeah.
when he's laying there.
Yeah, exactly. Like he doesn't care.
Yeah. So I don't think he cared.
Tyrion cares
So,
more
yeah.
for the children than
Oh,
Jamie
yeah, yeah.
ever did.
No,
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah. So but the thing is, like, I totally believe that Jamie would do what he did. I believe it. I buy it for the character. It's a sad story, but I believe it. I think it's in character. A lot of people are trying to say, "Oh, his character development's thrown out the window." It's like, no, he backslides is the point.
Yeah.
And that happens sometimes. It's a sad story, but it happens, and it does feel in character. I will say, as I said a moment ago, having them just have rubble fall on their heads while in the catacombs is not a very visually interesting way to have these two, central characters go out.
Yeah.
Yep. We were gypped.
Mike says, I wasn't mad at how they killed the twins, but I think that the expectation and speculation people had of who was going to be the one to kill Cersei was thrown out the window.
Yeah.
I guess the answer was Danny, but fans wanted a more creative death. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what that means.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. More than just a building falling on their heads.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I stand by what I said a couple of weeks ago, which is that prophecies in general are bullshit. So
Yes.
don't worry about it. But that said, I feel like if you really want to be determined about it, you could lead into it that Jamie leads her into the crypts. He does so because he thinks that there's a way out, but he leads her down there.
Mm-hmm.
and then the life is choked out of her by the pressure of rubble on her.
Is it?
Actually, Tyrion told them he told Jamie which direction to go. So
Well, but it was blocked by rubble.
right, but what I'm saying is they wouldn't have been down there most likely if Jamie hadn't
Well, okay, but I mean, like, why?
I'm just adding to it. Calm
Okay,
down.
I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. I'm not disagreeing.
Right,
I'm not.
okay.
You don't have to
All
argue
right.
me down. I was just adding
Okay.
on. It's
Fair
okay.
enough. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's so the point, like if people really want to be, obsessive about it, you could justify it that way. But I would encourage people to say part of the tropes that this whole saga is designed to subvert is that prophecies are bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there's any reality to them, it's like the Lord of Light. It's like
Right.
the Lord of Light will tell you what it wants you to hear, so that you'll do what it wants, completely separate from whether what it actually says is true.
Yeah.
I also think it's really funny that Cersei spent her entire life fearing and hating. Well, she hated Tyrion because she blamed him for killing her mother, but she also didn't trust him, thinking that he would be her undoing, and it was Jamie.
Yeah.
Not that I think she would have survived without that.
Although, Tyrion brought Daenerys back to her door. I don't know, but like the whole point is that it's like, she believed that she was cursed because she got this whole prophecy, and it's like, oh, you'll have 3 children and then they'll die. And so she's watching that happen, and so she believes it's all true. She gets kind of superstitious about it, and it's like, oh, yeah.
So can we talk about Clegane Bowl?
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask if everybody's done with their demise. So leading up right into Clegane Bowl, we have Arya and the Hound. So previously,
That's
when
fair.
Jamie hadn't gotten in, Arya and the Hound had blended in with the small folk and gotten into the Red Keep. It bugged me because she's super faceless ninja warrior, but she's just going to storm in with the Hound. And that's their plan, is they're just going to directly head into the keep and kill Cersei.
Well,
but
That's all the time that they had left.
I think and the reason it really bugs me is because, well, we can't have her do something like that again. She's already done that. I mean, what? She's going to kill everybody? You can't have her kill everybody.
Yeah.
If we'll see what happens next week, because I feel like the reason that works for me is that they are definitely setting it up like neither she nor the Hound expect to survive it.
Yeah.
They both say when they left the Winterfell last week that they don't expect to ever come back.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the reason they're not being secretive is because it's essentially a suicide mission.
Yeah.
And
how do you ensure that? By just walking directly in and declaring,
That's totally fair.
But no, I think the point is they don't need to make it about tricks, because they're just going to go in and do it. Like they wouldn't be recognized by anyone until it's too late anyway, is kind of the idea. But I didn't mind that, but I mean, I felt like, leading the scene where he suddenly tells her she can leave and it doesn't have to be all about,
that's awesome.
revenge, and like, I liked that.
Yeah.
I think I think it did sort of feel a little bit like, this is kind of down to the wire for that speech, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
you guys have already snuck your way into the Red Keep at this point. And
But
then again, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that I think we know her. And I was stunned that he reached her at that moment with buildings and shit falling. I mean, I didn't think he was going to convince her to leave. I think that, thank God that they had the relationship that they did. And when he actually tried to drop some profound knowledge on her, she was receptive to it, And it was, I think that it was because they were there, because of all the innocent people running around, because she was seeing things. She'd seen death before. She looked forward to seeing the Night King's face and seeing death in that form. She didn't fear it here. And he reminded her that, wait a minute, maybe you need to reassess whether or not you fear this now. Maybe you don't want to die here.
Yeah.
And it reached her, and I think it's because of where they were. I think he probably did try to stop her before, maybe not. We'd have to speculate, but
I think in the
he's
moment scene, the building is falling down. There really is. It doesn't have to be you looking her in the eye or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that everything about their plan made sense if they got there before things started burning, before the bells, all of these, everything was so focused. Yes, she was definitely going to go. They would probably have to sneak into the Red Keep if they got there earlier. And then once they were there, they were like, well, what else are we going to do? We're here. Let's go kill her. And I agree that I think that, I don't think he could have convinced her to leave before, but at that point he's like, what? Sorry, I just heard a noise. At that point, it's like, well, what's the point? What are you actually gonna do here?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of that is kind of important. Now, this goes to Christiana's whole thing. It's a lot of what we're seeing is not why are the characters doing this, but why are the writers doing this? The writers are doing this so that Arya sees the carnage. It was just to get Arya there. They knew that if they got Arya there early enough, she would actually have killed Cersei, and the fans wouldn't like that. But yeah, so we've got a couple of comments in the chat. Paulette says this scene really made me mad. The fact that the Hound basically tells her, "Don't become me, go home," and then she turns around and leaves. Arg. Dan D says, how long have they been traveling together? He waits until then to tell her that. Did they not talk during the whole trip? I don't think they talked during the whole trip.
I don't think
Sandor doesn't talk much.
But the Hound is not a good communicator.
No.
And I think,
And then just gonna get through these. And then Paulette says, how many days or weeks were they on the road? And they're only having this talk now. Why not when they met outside of Winterfell? Again, I think we addressed that. And then still Paulette, why did she actually leave? Why didn't she follow him anyway? Then she'd have been there to intercept Cersei. I think she would have, but I think also she realized, what am I doing? Like, Cersei's dead. Like, once
there's a dragon.
Yeah, this is it. Cersei's dead, and I'm not helping anything.
Right. It's one thing if they feel like Cersei has to die and it's not going to happen unless we do something.
Right.
But when they're both there and the Red Keep is crumbling and the city's burning, he's right. He's saying, you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
She's done for anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can make a different choice. You can go on and have the rest of your life doing something else. You have a choice now that you didn't before because we know she's going to die.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to feel like you're going to die with her just for the hell of it.
Yeah. I think it was. Sorry.
The only time I teared up during this episode was when she called him Sandor.
Right.
Yeah. That was so cute.
That was huge.
I think that it was kind of an interesting flip on the scene that Arya had with Nymeria, where she sends Nymeria away because it's not necessary for her to die for whatever reason. And I feel like, Jon did a shitty job with that by Arya standards with Ghost, last week. But I think it was kind of a similar thing in the way she looked up at him. That was, I know that, she's 22 in real life or whatever, but she looked like that little bitty girl way back, 5 or 6 seasons ago with those big eyes. And it was just like, it did have to be there. That was the only thing that broke her reverie of hate and her need to finish this list before someone else finished it. And thank God that there were other people that were killed that she didn't kill that were on her list. Because if Cersei were the only one that she had left that she hadn't killed herself, I think that that would have possibly ended differently just on honor or some sick, twisted death focus. But having those buildings fall apart around her
Yeah.
definitely impacted her decision
Yeah.
for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I saw. Yeah, she was done with her list.
Yeah.
She released it, and
Maybe
of course
has
the
a new
big
one.
question is now what? Where does she go? Does she decide
Right.
maybe living in Storm's End isn't so bad? Like
Well,
I could be a lady my way.
Well, nah,
I
Maybe.
think that one of the reasons that they had her wander for so long is to set it up for her to, and this is just me speculating, but she's so traumatized by what she's seen, the children, that little girl dying with the little horse toy or whatever that was, all these things that she saw. I mean, is she gonna let Danny rule after this? I mean, trade one queen for another.
This is total, like, this for me, watching Arya go through all of this. And by the way, I feel like we get a little bit of the panic that we saw in Arya during the fight at Winterfell. I think that we have a lot of flashbacks to Arya escaping King's Landing in season 1 or the beginning of season 2. But I think like her seeing all this and just seeing how bad, like, she's killed people.
Yeah.
She has killed people, and she has killed people in horrible ways. But she's seeing just random people being killed.
Yeah.
These are not people who have been killed for any good reason. This is just random sampling, and there's no rhyme or reason why anyone survives, and most of them don't. And of course, they bring in the little girl and Nora that we only know her name because of closed captioning. Not sure why she has a name, but she has a name. And it's Nora. We see them so that we can care about these characters, just so that we can be upset when she sees their remains later, so that it motivates her. And when I watch this, I'm like, yeah, Arya's going to kill Daenerys, and I am all for it.
Yeah. We saw that mother and daughter earlier in the episode, because when the gates are being closed and Arya and the Hound are like like some of the last in, we see them brush past that mother and daughter, and I thought we were going to see that mother and daughter die later, and the implication would have been they didn't get in through the gates because Arya and the Hound took their spot.
Right.
But then, of course, that turned out to be kind of moot. But we did see them at that point.
Yeah. And at that point, as soon as they push past, the mother goes, "Hang on," and she starts grabbing for Arya's hand.
Yeah, try to follow them through their
try to link up with them. And then when they pick up Arya, they say, "Hold on," and they get Arya through with that same tactic.
Right. I actually really, I feel like it did feel a little bit like it could have been like what they did talk about before they got to the city, what their plan was, what they thought was going to happen. One or two conversations of that nature before this one might have made this one feel a little bit less abrupt. But by and large, I really liked it. And even though with Arya, we could have imagined a version of this story where he's not able to talk her out of it and she does go with him. But if we play out what happens there, right, is that she and the Hound show up together in that moment where the Hound shows up alone. Hound's fighting Gregor, and Cersei tries to get away, and presumably Arya kills her, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then they both die when the castle crumbles on them. So is that the story we wanted? I don't think so. I mean, for that matter, one thing that could have been interesting there, just a way that could have gone, is like Arya kills Cersei and then Jaime shows up.
Yeah.
That could have
would
been
be great. That would
but she puts on Cersei's face, and then they have this no.
Yeah, but that would also be fun. But I kept hoping, okay, Jaime promised he would get Cersei to the boats. He didn't promise anything after that. And I was like, I totally believe that this is not what's going to happen, but how cool would it be if he gets her out to the boat and then he kills her and they die together?
I wondered still if it was possible that they might be doing that, but I kind of like I didn't buy it, but also just like I was kind of poisoned against that sort of a plot line just because of so many people after last week trying to defend what Jamie did to Brienne as like, oh, but what he's really doing is he's just going to go kill Cersei and he just doesn't want Brienne to follow him. So she's treating her like Harry and the Hendersons, where you have to throw rocks at her and say, go away, you go to your home, and like act like she's not a living, breathing human being with her own thoughts and feelings. And like, so I was so mad at people trying to defend Jamie with that as the excuse, that I was feeling like, even if that's true, it's not okay. And so I was kind of all primed to not want those people to be like, I not want the showrunners to try to validate that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would rather Jamie just is unable to move past his own psychic baggage associated with Cersei, and he does go back to her, and it is sad and shitty and tragic, but real, as opposed to the idea that they would have him go back, kill Cersei, and then somehow try to go back and say, now that he has rid the world of Cersei, he can go back to his one true love. I would have been really pissed if they tried to do that.
Yeah. I'm a little behind in the chat. Paulette says Arya is only in King's Landing to be our tour guide, and we're walking.
Yeah.
Now we're running. Now we're burning. Keep up, everyone.
Behind the, inside the episode, like the showrunners literally say that like she's there so that we have a character we care about, their perspective, to show all the danger and disaster happening to the city. Which, I mean, like, as a storytelling device, I mean, that's probably true. That it makes it more effective. Although I'll go ahead and say, a lot of the scenes of destruction of the city, excessive.
Excessive, repetitive, very repetitive. Yeah.
Paulette does say again, the scene would have benefited greatly from more time. I'm not sure if you're talking about
that was
Arya.
from the Arya and Sandor's conversation.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. So then, yes, I will agree with that. I was going to say I don't think we needed more. And then Mike says I may be jumping a little ahead. My mind went to Lynchian for a minute, seeing this random white horse show up out of nowhere. I thought she may have died and riding off. And then once they showed her in next week's preview, I knew I was wrong. So I'm going to, I was going to bring this in the wrap up, but there was something that I saw, and it was how DMB revel. And I agree, this is perfect for what my big complaint is. They revel in this fetishization of agony. And I feel like a lot of what we were seeing was that it wasn't so, like, some of it, we needed to express a point, and some of it was just, oh, we're going to put in more suffering. Oh, let's put in more. Let's really twist the knife, and it's like, guys, enough. Like,
well, that's been a problem with the show in the past. It's been
a problem with the show the entire time. So.
I saw a mention of being biblical parallels of her
with the pale mare
off on the white horse. Yeah, I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him.
Yeah,
Revelation 6:8.
And in the books, they mention the pale mare, and it shows up a couple of times, but it's basically supposed to be a symbol of death, and it makes sense. Arya is going to ride it. Yada yada.
Yeah, so on the whole, like I thought, like, sort of there was some pretentiousness about the whole sequence, but I didn't mind it because it did actually look cool. I will certainly acknowledge it doesn't really fit the rest of the episode. Like, it does feel out of nowhere, and very different stylistically than the whole rest of the episode, which is very gritty and realistic. And then that one sequence is very different. But I didn't hate it. It was very beautiful looking. It was cool. Yeah. Pretty cool. But yeah, they certainly did belabor her getting really beat up and seeing lots of devastation in the city. And I agree with Nutty, because I think that they are setting her up to either succeed or at least try to kill Danny next time.
Mhm. I was seeing, like, my mind kept going every corner she turned, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they're going to die now. And this is the whole, the god of death demands another life, or whatever, the whole balance thing, of why she was going to lose them. And then I thought the mom is going to die. And now she's going to be saddled with a child. And
Yeah.
is that going to happen? And then
I saw this this article that was trying to sell that whole thing was suggestion that Arya is actually Azor Ahai.
Yeah, I've been seeing
Again,
more and
like
more.
still, like somehow that wasn't enough for her to kill the Night King. She also has to do this, I guess.
Yeah. Was that the one where it was? It's the story of Azor Ahai, but in reverse.
I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe like I'm definitely still on my prophecies are bullshit approach. So
Even George has said that.
Yeah.
George says that all the time. He's like, the whole point of prophecies is you can't lean too hard into them because then you get bound by them. But it's really good because it motivates your characters
Mhm.
to think and believe things. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I can bring up another prophecy. Melisandre saw Arya in the books, not in the show. She saw Arya on a white horse, and in the books, it turns out it's somebody else on a white horse. But it could have been that she just didn't know when she was seeing it. Whatever.
Mhm.
They're fun to speculate about,
Yeah.
but at the same time, what I like about this show and what I like about the books is that, yeah, we've got prophecies abound and multiple interpretations, and all of them are true,
Yeah.
and none of them are true, and that's
Yeah.
awesome.
See, I agree. So the fact that I'm, dismissing like,
Yeah.
oh, prophecies are bullshit, is like, well, but that doesn't mean that stories about them aren't cool, because they definitely are. I think it taps into this very primal thing of the human beings don't know the future and wish we did. We wish we could know the future, and this prospect of, oh, this thing will allow you to tell the future and predict the future. Like there's this very deep-seated desire that we wish we could know the future, and so we will believe prophecies even though frequently the prophecies are so vague as to not ever be actually useful for anything. I mean, it's like
Well,
goes back into our most ancient religions and stuff.
yeah. I mean, if so Greek, a lot of our tropes of drama come from Greek drama and myths. And the whole point is every time we see prophecy in Greek drama and myth, it ends up becoming self-fulfilling. It ends up changing the motivations of characters, and that without that
Yeah.
prophecy, things would not have turned out that way. We
Oedipus
even
Rex.
see that in the Bible. Yeah, Oedipus Rex.
Yeah.
Exactly. We see it in the Bible with Moses. There's so many times that this is a really powerful theme, and so I dig that this is in the world.
Yeah. So I like the storytelling of people constantly trying to figure out prophecies.
Mhm.
What I don't necessarily like as much is people watching the show,
fans
trying to bend over backwards to make the prophecy actually be completely accurate and true, which I think actually sort of gets away from the point of what's cool about using them in stories, is
Agreed.
that you can't really always connect the dots, even after the fact. Yeah. But so as far as like what's the point of the moment with the horse and Arya, I think it is setting up she's going to be the one to kill Daenerys next time, and they just got a little out of they wanted it to look cool, and so they kind of just started down a road of like, hey, let's make that look cool, and then it looked cool, and then they left it in because for that reason.
I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe White Horse rebirth,
Yeah.
and she'll be a different Arya.
I think White Horse.
I don't
she's
think
off
she's
to kill
killing anybody
somebody.
again.
Yeah.
She's done with killing.
You think?
Well, it was the only reason that Harry Strickland existed, was so that that there could be a white horse.
Did he get a first name?
Yeah.
Is he actually Harry?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Harry Fancy Pants Strickland.
Uh-huh.
Oh boy.
So we end with Arya. There's one scene left. Clegane Bowl.
Mhm.
They finally
Well,
So first we have, of course, the Sandor comes up and we have the Qyburn and Cersei trying to control the mountain. Stay, boy. No, stay. And he just up and whomps Qyburn. I thought that was brilliant.
Yes.
I don't think he needed any more creative death other than being
I
killed by his own creation.
perfect.
That was
As a
perfect.
surprise. Beautiful.
I also love that the whole idea is that we get this feeling that the mountain is reanimated, is mindless and has no desires.
yeah.
And that his only goal here is to protect the queen. And there's nothing stirring in him. And then this I love because it's like, no. The mountain's hatred defies everything.
Yeah.
It defies death. It defies the fact that his conditioning has really sunk in. No.
Yeah.
It's so strong.
I loved the way Qyburn goes out, and it's such a simple, awkward, weird little moment. But I loved so much Cersei seeing Qyburn go out like that and then just kind of say, excuse me, I'm gonna sneak by. Like, okay,
Oh my God, that was
you're like,
hysterical.
I'm just gonna, you guys do your thing. I'm just gonna, all right,
Don't
yeah,
mind
okay,
me.
right now. Yeah,
I know it
Timing.
wasn't in the music. But in my head I heard beep, 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 beep.
Oh,
thank you. Thank you.
Perfect
Yeah.
timing.
I was
exactly
laughing
what I-
so hard.
Oh man, I loved that moment so much. It was such a great moment of just like organic little just situational
Yeah.
comedy that just came naturally from that whole situation of just like,
Yeah.
okay, so I see you guys got, something to talk about, so I'm just going to leave you to it. Yeah.
Anyone that is Paulette says, Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, exit stage left.
Yeah.
Right.
Command you to protect me. Never mind. Anyone that is disappointed with the way Cersei died and that somebody didn't kill her, I will say that we got the fulfillment of Cersei got broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cersei was like, no, the Red Keep will stand. No.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can't
Abandoned
lose.
in our moment of triumph.
Yeah, it's just she can't believe it. And this is the moment when she is 100% she's completely broken. Like she was broken up at the top when she finally decided to go to Maegor's Keep, which I'm pretty sure she swore she would never be going to
She
again.
cried, girl.
She felt
Yeah.
so weak the last time she was there, and she was like, I am not doing this. I am a queen. I am not hiding there. I'm not going to kill myself. And then at this moment, she was just like, I'm just gonna go over here now.
Yeah.
I'm hopeless. I have nothing. And so seeing Cersei get broken, that was satisfying as a fan.
I agree. The other thing I want to actually just call out, because it's just a very minor, just sort of environmental storytelling thing, but when the wall of that stairway was crumbling, it was actually really cool the way the mountain bent over Cersei and Qyburn. And it was just taking the hits to
and taking
shield
out
them.
soldiers left and right.
Yeah,
Like
just
the remaining.
and you
almost.
there was a couple of times where you hear him go "Ugh," as like a big masonry chunk is falling on him. Like that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it sets up, of course, that amazing backdrop for the fight, and it's like that stuff was pretty good. So, there's plenty of things to be mad at this episode about, and we've talked about a lot of them, but there was some good stuff too. I liked it a lot.
I've read some complaints about Clegane Bowl. People were just like, it was underwhelming. Here's the thing, and this is another instance of I think that this could not be as good as it may be in the books. I think when you've been abused by somebody, when you're trying to get that closure, and essentially this is what Sandor's trying to do. He wants to kill his brother for closure so that he'll feel better about what happened to him.
As a
child, growing up, everything. And you know what? When you've been through something like that, and I'm going to open up, be a little, share too much information, but when you've been abused, when you've been through something like that, there is no closure.
Yeah.
There is no settling.
Yeah.
That no matter what you do, Nothing's going to fix that. Nothing's going to make that feel better. And most of the time, you're not going to get on, I'm sorry. You're not going to get, I was wrong. Your
Mhm.
abuser tends to, and even if they did, I'm not sure that would make you feel any better.
Right.
But your abuser tends to think that they are still the hero of their own story. They
Mhm.
think they did the right thing, and that you're being sensitive or whatever they think. You're not
Right.
going to get that closure. And in the books, if we're inside Sandra's head, this might be more of a payoff for the reader to see that, yeah, you've spent your whole life thinking about revenge and it means nothing because you can never get it. You're more emotionally invested in this than he ever was.
Mhm.
And you're just, I will say though, it is quite poetic that it does end that Sandor is pushing the mountain into fire.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That as a viewer it's poetic, it's nice. But yeah, there is no closure. And I'm just
Mhm.
really glad that he didn't lose his eyes before going into the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he
The,
maybe lost one. He was kind of still just.
It looked like,
Yeah.
yeah, he may have lost one. I thought the mountains reveal, we see the face, and then the
Mhm.
armor breaks apart, and just pretty satisfying how grotesque he was.
Mhm.
My nitpick would be that we don't have any kind of undead logic or any, like,
Yeah. There's no
so he's
rules for how
been
he works.
mindless, but he wasn't really mindless. He still has
Yeah.
this hate, but he gets stabbed and stabbed. Okay, so you can't kill him, and he's resistant to all these types of attacks, but he still has the wounds from before he was dead. Like, but
Yeah.
he can get stabbed through the brain. He's not mindless, but apparently doesn't need his
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
I don't know. But so those are the
I agree.
nitpicks. It
There's
doesn't
no
matter.
rules about it, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's kind of just it could be suggested that he is like a white. Only fire can do it.
Yeah.
Who
knows?
Interesting. Yeah.
I
that'd
will
be interesting.
say that there was kind of like a double meaning there when he takes off the helmet and the big reveal, and Sanders like, yeah, that's you. That's who you've always been. That's how you've always truly been, which is really nice, poetic. But also, since
Yeah.
we've had multiple actors, it's kind of funny. Like to
Yeah.
me, it was a little double
Yeah.
of, oh yeah, that's who you've always
Yeah.
been.
Mhm.
That's how Sandor always saw him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I thought it was satisfying. I
Yeah,
like
me too. I liked the visuals of having that cool, broken open staircase with the,
Mhm.
I mean, I thought all of that was really cool. I was very happy with it. I mean, obviously, sad that Sandor does have to sort of go out to take out his brother, but I think we all kind of saw that coming.
Yeah, he
That,
wasn't. He
that's
wasn't going to
that's
come out of that.
yeah, it's the whole thing. It's the whole point of his speech to Arya, which is to say, I have made the commitment in my own heart that I want to do this, not just knowing that I might die, but honestly that I expect to die, and really once I've accomplished my goal, have nothing else to live for anyway.
Yeah.
And yet you could be different.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I have no other choice in me at this moment, but you could. And that's his whole point. And I think that, she does realize that it was one thing if she felt like she had to take out Cersei, but if she's going to go out anyway, maybe Arya could survive. She could have another life. And I liked that, even though, of course, it just sets her up at the end to well, now she just has a different list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So in our chat, by the way, we had Princess Elsa join us. And we've already discussed this, but I did want to make sure that I addressed it. It said, do you think George R.R. Martin intended for Daenerys to become bad like they made her? I think that has definitely been foreshadowed, and that has been something constantly going on. It's something that Dany has been struggling with in the books. I think there's more of a definitely more invested there in the books than in the series. Correct me if I'm
Well,
wrong.
no, I agree. Also, the thing is that what a book is going to automatically do, assuming we get a POV
Yeah.
chapter, is put us in Danny's headspace,
Yeah.
which is, as we talked about, that is the critical piece that's missing from how things played out here, is that if we do the work, we can piece together all the reasons she might have felt like she needed to make the decision she made. And it makes sense, but we have to do the work. They don't
Yeah.
show it to us. And so a book, if we're getting a Danny chapter, the book is going to be putting us right there in her headspace. Even if we are horrified that she's actually following through, we will see why she felt like she had to.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. 100%. And quick question, when you were talking about the beginning of the episode, did you talk about Varys trying to poison Danny?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. And I'm assuming that little girl is who he left his rings for.
Yeah, we talked
Okay.
about that. I mentioned how it did not occur to me that that's what was happening when watching, but I read a recap that made that point, and I was like, oh yeah, probably.
That
But
was
yeah,
the
we
first
talked
thing
about
I
it.
thought of
Yeah.
because every time I saw Varys, I'm like, why is he still alive? Somebody needs to kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking that the rings are a reward for
Yeah.
some of the little birds, but possibly could also be a signal
Yeah.
that
Mm.
that blows up some time bomb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the other thing we talked about at the beginning was that I suspect next week we will find out that he already sent many messages all over the
Yeah.
place,
He
saying
had plenty of
saying-
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you all think about the green explosions?
Oh, the wildfire. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought there had been mentioned that, there were caches hidden throughout the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it made sense they may not have known where they all were or something. I thought
yeah.
maybe speculation that Cersei had planted them there or something. I think it
Yeah.
was all just left over.
Yeah, I thought that the implication was supposed to be that they were left over from her father, and so her dragon fire setting them off was really like she'd become her father. She was
Oh,
finishing
that's
what her
interesting.
father promised to do and never did,
Hmm.
and so I think that was probably that's what I thought they were going for. But again, it's another thing of like, but the show doesn't tell us that.
Yeah.
It just shows
Mhm.
the green flashes, and so maybe it'll come up next week, but like
My guess was that like Cersei was turning the city into a trap.
yeah.
And so that if
Well,
she did start burning things,
yeah.
then it would inflame her own troops, blah, blah, blah. But
Well,
again, they didn't show us anything.
my prediction at the start of the season was that the way this was going to go down was that Cersei was going to burn the city herself to keep
Yeah.
anybody else from taking it. That's what I
Yep.
predicted at the start of the season.
Which is
Obviously,
probably why I was thinking that,
yeah. Well, and the thing is, so like, obviously that's not what happened. But at the same time, there's more than one possible explanation for why those were there. So to make sure we saw them, but not give any actual context, feels weird. Like
It was like they would go off and then you'd see a character reacting. Lots of looks, but no.
It's very
anything.
clear they wanted us to notice them happening.
I think they honestly D&D honestly thought they were doing us a favor, that was like a payoff to the true fans that remember those caches were in King's
Yeah.
Landing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like it makes the most sense to me, given the rest of the story, that they're trying to pay off that is what the Mad King had wanted to do when he
Yeah.
was saying he would burn the city, and that she did that for him so it's like a figurative element of
Yeah.
she has become her father. She has become
Bringing
the
it
Mad
full
Queen.
circle.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm so unsettled about things, like there's just so
Yeah.
many things where I'm like, but just
Yeah.
show me. Just show me what you're trying to show me.
Mhm.
Don't
Well,
make
and-
me guess. I mean, and
and-
I'm fine with guessing and I'm fine with speculating. It's just, it feels like they only did the exciting part of the project and they
Yeah.
left the hard work, you know?
Well, here's the thing is that, we've talked a bunch about already about how HBO offered them enough money to do more episodes, but they decided this was how many they wanted to do. Now, I think they made that decision to go with 13 like before season 7. And so to some extent, maybe they thought that they would still have more time by the end. And it was like, once they made the decision for 13, then they were sort of pinned in. But nonetheless, I won't even say that that's the problem in this episode. This episode had 15 minutes too much of just destroying the city.
Yeah, agree.
And they could have cut a lot of that without any negative impact on the storytelling. And it would have given them 15 more minutes to add to some of this stuff that we were just talking about. So
Yeah.
It's like D&B were playing SimCity and they got bored like everyone does after a while playing SimCity, and then they just started adding disasters to their city. It's kind of like that. It was like, all right, what else can we blow up? What more agony and tragedy can we show on screen just because it's fun?
I saw a good meme that was of John in the bit where he's looking up sort of disappointed and horrified. And what it said is, John remembering how last week they told him that there wasn't enough money in the budget for him to pet his dog.
Oh, I saw a great one, and it was Keanu Reeves as John Wick with superimposed over Ghost, and it said the John Ghost deserves.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have any parting thoughts?
It's really just kind of thoughts about what's going to happen next time. But I guess I'll just reiterate what I said at the beginning, which was, frankly, I liked this episode a lot more than last week. I know a lot of people are sort of extra mad, but I feel like, the two big things in this episode that seem to be the points of controversy are Danny's turn, which I feel like is justified, just not communicated well. It's clumsy, but overall, I think the broader story supports it. It's just not executed very well in the moment, which I think is a fair complaint, but that's definitely different than saying it was a bad writing for it to happen at all. Right?
I agree. Yeah.
And then the other thing of, like Cersei and Jamie, it's like, if there was anything I was going to be mad at about that, I was mad about it last week. But, and so now it was like, oh, okay, well, that's the direction they're going. So here we are. And I was actually surprised how affected I was by them sort of reuniting and her being so happy to see him and worried about him being wounded. Obviously she's a bad person. She deserves to die for stuff she's done, for sure. He makes the choice to go die in that toxic relationship instead of being better, which is sad but believable for his character. And so I don't know, I was kind of moved by that whole sequence, even though I think just ultimately it was a little bit of a strange choice to say that having the rubble fall on them in the tombs was that's the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ratings.
Yes. What do you rate it, Chooch?
I'm going to rate it 7 steps to flee King's Landing. So you gotta go where those dragons were, and then you gotta go down here, and then you go and you get a boat, and then if the wind, I don't know. That's all I got.
Viv?
Hey, so my mic was dead, but I was going to say before we did ratings, I did want to just touch on the scene with John facing off with, was it the Lannister troops? And that whole part where he's watching as everything just falls apart and Grey Worm attacks the Lannister soldier. And we're watching this arc where we're finally seeing John kind of wake up And like I said before, where like he was so happy to just follow Danny, like when or when Varys said, well, you know what she's going to do. And he was like, she's my queen. Sorry, bro.
Yeah.
And he knew and he knew and he knew, and he saw all these things starting to happen that he was worried and scared about. And he knew she was going to burn the city. But until she actually did it, and until he saw his own troops killing and slaughtering, and the guy, it was a northern man that was going off to rape that woman, and he killed him. And
Yeah,
and
what
then
was
you
that?
turn around, and then you turn around and you see a Lannister guard helping a bunch of civilians try and get to a safe place, and that whole mix of the good guys or the bad guys, and now the bad guys are the good guys in some cases, was just like such a really powerful dynamic. And while I really appreciate Kit Harington and his acting, I just wish that they would direct him to have more of a reaction than just like a dull confusion of what's this? Because I feel like at this point he's seen so many things and he knows what this is. And I just wish that it hadn't taken so much to turn him. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what he comes up with the next time he sees Danny. I mean, it'll be interesting because she knows that Jon betrayed her. She knows that Tyrion betrayed her. And when word gets out, it's going to be really scary. But the fact that he took his men and left the city, and I know that, you know, she's firebombing it and buildings are falling and all of that sort of stuff, but he sheathed his sword. He wasn't going to kill anybody else. And he looked Davos in the eye when he did it, like, this is what I'm doing. Peace out, bro. You do what you got to do, but I'm not killing another person. This is enough death. That's how I took it. Like, he's seen so much death and he was trying to prevent more. And now he's just seeing absolute slaughter and mayhem. And it's really hard to see him go through that, but it was necessary.
My frustration there was that eventually he realizes that Danny is not even being discriminate in her burning and feels like he has to get the forces out because, I mean, she's going to burn them next for all he knows. And so he orders them to withdraw. But why didn't he do that before?
Yeah. They kind of did.
Them all doing these horrible things.
Listen.
Yeah, well, I guess so. But it's like they listen when the plot decides that they do.
Yeah.
Right.
My big thing was, when have we ever seen northern men trying to rape civilians in the middle of a battle? Like that, I don't understand that.
No, I think that's one of the things. I think that's one of the things that contributed to him snapping, though, is because he saw them as the good guys.
Yeah.
But
and we've got to remember that they probably absorbed some Boltons up there in those Winterfell troops too.
Right. But remember, there was also like when Brienne was traveling with Jaime, they found those women that had been hanged by Northern Army because they slept with Lannisters, slept with Lannister forces and stuff like that. So like, I think that we don't want to be deifying the Northmen as though they're somehow pure, right? So I felt like it was disappointing, but not surprising to me that once the surrender is offered and not accepted, and Danny just starts burning everything, like to a bunch of soldiers whose blood is up for a fight, and now they're standing there awkward with the adrenaline still pumping. That's like a signal. Is like, everything's on now. This is what you do. And I mean, historically, if we talk about medieval battles, sacking the city was an expected part.
Right. But what I am saying is that Jon remains to be super, super naive about what his own troops were capable of doing. And I think that played into it when he saw that his troops were participating in this. That was like the holy fuck. I can't, this is too much.
Well,
and when he has to tell the woman that he just saved to go hide from the men that have come to free the city, that's a really hard moment for him.
Go hide from my men,
Exactly what I'm saying.
And to Jon's defense a little bit, he fought with the Night's Watch. They don't rape. They're not supposed to sleep with anyone. So that wasn't really a thing. The wildlings do, but again, that was never really part of their sacking tactics. That was more of a recording thing. I'm not making
I don't even
excuses. I'm
know.
just saying, like, it was
Yeah.
not something that he actually had to deal with. And he's never actually fought with a northern force. So there is that. Mike says, and by the way, his own soldier tried to kill him. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
You know, it's there's a lot that went on. It
Yeah.
just, oof.
I agree. I think that we all could feel like he was naive and slow to react in that moment, but I think that's all just of a piece with him having chosen to go all in with Danny,
Yep.
even against evidence that she was
Mhm.
losing it.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
his moment to say, you know, I don't want to be the leader, but it looks like I'm gonna have to.
yeah,
Again.
Yeah. So Viv, what do you give this?
Oh. So I did not decide before we had the conversation. Um,
I only just picked my rating now, so
honestly, I think I'm gonna stick with my initial. Like after I watched it, I was like, "Meh, that's probably what I'll fall." And it's pretty much, you guys have talked me back up from how low it was. It was lower earlier, but I'll give it a 6.
all right.
I think a lot of people were really hard on this episode in a way that surprised me a little bit, just because I was very low on last week, but people seem to think this one was worse. Whereas when watching it, I felt like it was a significant step up, even if it still had its own issues.
I
I
agree
gave
on
it
that.
a 4 last
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
This
No,
is a
I-
6. So
I'm
like,
not
I feel
arguing.
like
No,
Yeah.
I'm sharing your feeling
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that there is an interesting discussion in the broader fandom about it, that I feel like when we talk through it, we can remember there's actually a fair amount of good stuff
Yeah.
in it. But it's hard to not just focus on the bad stuff sometimes, especially when that's what the broader conversation is focusing on.
Yeah.
Yep.
When we've been waiting for 10 years to see how Cersei's gonna bite it,
Mhm.
it's just, you can't,
Rocks fall, everyone dies.
there's just
Yeah.
disappointment.
Yeah.
If you had told me
Yeah.
that the building was gonna fall on her, I would have said, Psh, what? No.
Killed by
Mhm.
masonry.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Christiana, what do you give it?
I was actually gonna go a little higher than everyone else was saying, and I couldn't. I was torn between two different ratings. One, I thought about using awkward little side steps around Clegane Bowl, but instead, I think what I'm going to go with is 7 out of 10 free horses.
Mm.
So you're the same as Chooch.
Mhm.
All right. So I am actually going to give it. It's somewhere for me. Somewhere between an average episode and mediocre. And so using my rating system that I use everywhere else, that would give me a 4.5 out of 10. Oh, I had something for this. Hang on. Shoot. I had something good for this too.
I believe you.
Uh,
It's late.
I was just so distracted. Yeah, you know what? We're gonna give it the highlight of my episode. 4.5 out of 10. Killed traitors named Varys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that gives us a 6.1 for the episode. But we also have some fan ratings. Mike McCauley, he gives it a 6 out of 10. Happy little dragon strafes, dragonfire strafes. And our fans our listeners and viewers are a lot more creative than I am. Paulette says +6 better battle tactics and awesome effects scenes, -4 clumsy character twists.
Yeah.
And Dan D gives it 6 out of 10 ringing bells.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't think we have the title for next week's episode. They're keeping it a secret again.
Yeah.
To be determined.
All right. Let's see. I will say I don't think my whole hope for demolishing the entire monarchy is actually going to happen in one episode, and that we get like, anarchy in Westeros, or at least democracy in Westeros. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. After last week's episode, I had this one little idea, this one little hope of hopes that the last episode would be a jump to the future, and like there's Gendry at Storm's End, and he's finishing like a feast or whatever, and he goes up to his bedchamber, and in his bedchamber, like Arya surprises him and he's like, what, where did you come from? And she's like, did you find a lady yet? And he's like, no, not yet. And she's like, good, and takes off her clothes, and it's just like that. Arya's like, yeah, I could still get me a piece, whatever. But I have no idea.
I think we'll get that 50 years later where the land has been prosperous and
reborn. That would be awesome. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Arya pregnant with Gendry's kid was one of my predictions somewhere in there.
Yeah, you had a lot of predictions.
Yeah.
I am really trying hard to combat my natural instincts and avoid making predictions about next week. There are things that I can't help but think are possible, but I'm trying to personally just try to say, I'm just going to let them tell the story they're telling, and we'll see what it is. And I can judge after that, but I don't want to decide in advance what I think they should do.
Yeah.
I will say that if that's the last that we saw of Sam Tarley, I will be disappointed.
I think that's the last.
I'm just saying.
Unless he's writing in a book, which is the Song of Ice and Fire.
Right.
I don't know how I'll feel if that comes true.
I suspect we'll see everyone at Winter. Well, see, I'm not gonna. I'm not predicting anything.
Do it. Join us.
I think this is the part where we thank everybody for tuning in. Thank everybody in the chat room for hanging with us and giving us your perspectives. And next week, Monday night, we'll be here to discuss the final episode. Wow, here we are.
Exciting.
Yeah.
That'll be exciting.
Wow.
Thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Next week.
If you have feedback for the Beyond the Wall podcast, you can email us at btw@specficmedia.com. You can also leave us a comment on the website. Go to specficmedia.com, where you'll find a shiny BTW button. That'll take you right to our page. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 3.0 Unported license. Feel free to share and remix. Just give us credit and don't charge money for it.